People, I found the 5x7 burlap canvases at Dollar Tree. So I grabbed a bunch because I knew I needed to give you guys some DIY ideas for these. For this wall decor piece, we're going to just need one, that's right, just one little burlap canvas. And we're going to want to flip it on its back and grab something to catch the paint through our stencil like this napkin. I'm just kidding, people. We're not really going to use the napkin. We're going to grab this little styrofoam piece and put behind here. This is just to catch the paint that is going to come through when we're tapping it on top of our stencil, because obviously burlap is thin, it's fabric, and it's going to smoosh on in there. We don't want to ruin our surface we're working on. I also realized that the stencil was kind of popping up a little bit, so I took some painter's tape and put it in several sections that fit inside the canvas with the stencil before I started, and I made sure to fully load my little brush that I'm using and then offload it before I started my stenciling. If you need any stencil information, I actually have a how-to stencil tutorial. I can put it down in the description box for you for more information. Stenciling fabric can be a tricky thing, so I tend to swirl my brush as I'm applying the paint. It doesn't really sit on top of the material like it does a wood or it does a piece of paper and then slowly absorb in. It absorbs in right away. So the swirl motion just helps give you more control of your application. And if you find that you have some bare spots, you can take a thin brush that's a little bit thinner than the stencil and go over on the inside with the paint color, making it deeper in the sections you feel are a little bit lighter. And check this out. Look how flawless this is. Now we're going to bring in the tacky glue because I want to put a little frame around this. I'm sure I could add some wood and, you know, Home Depot trim that I love, but I found this lace at Dollar Tree and I've been holding onto it for just this occasion. And I decided to, instead of wrapping it around the edges, which you could also do and that would look nice as well, I took it and cut it like I would on a 45-degree angle, a piece of wood, and attached each piece. Now this is a little painstaking with the patience when you're measuring fabric versus wood, and it's not exact, so you might have to stretch it out just a smidge to get it right in that crease to meet up. But I highly recommend using the tacky glue because it's manipulatable versus using a glue gun. Then when you've got it in the spot that you want it in, you can take some hot glue or fabric glue if you have that little hot glue fabric glue and attach it. I decided to just pop it right in the corners while this dried, you know what I'm saying, and put it off for a day just to make sure that it was, you know, all nice and together before I showed you the reveal. Now I felt this need a little bit of something, so we're gonna need to bring in the stapler. And let's talk about this stapler because I probably get about 100 questions a month about this sucker all the time. It's famous. It is an arrow stapler and it is from Home Depot. This is not sponsored, by the way. However, I've tried several different staplers. This is really easy to open close. It is also easy for me to squeeze the staple out of without having to apply a lot of pressure. And as many of you know, I struggle with hand grip strength. So I love using this piece. It was a little tiresome at first learning it because it's easy to get it turned around. But I hope this answers a lot of questions for those of you that are asking where I got it from, what's the brand. Now you know. Let's make a wall pocket with these two 5x7 burlap canvases. And I know what you're thinking, Brandi, that line, ew. Listen, we're going to cover it up, okay? Just be patient and roll on with me. First, let's attach these suckers with some tacky glue and some hot glue, okay? Just a little bit of hot glue to get that immediate hold, and that tacky glue is going to make sure that this don't go nowhere for the long haul. And while we're at it, we should just bring the stapler in. If you're on Team Miter Shears, I'm sorry, but it's all about the stapler today. And per usual, I didn't bother to check to see if the staples were in here when I went to do this. So, really? And I felt like, you know what? This is a teachable moment. Check out how easy this is to just plop these suckers right on in here and roll on with your DIY project. Now it's time to pick your fabric, and I just decided to stay neutral, and truth be told, this was the only fabric I could find because I've been organizing my area, and you know what? I just threw this on here. So pick something pretty, okay? This matched. It worked for what I needed to work it for, which was to give you this idea. I cut this down to size, just short of where our little crease was and just above the bottom of our burlap canvases. Again, we're bringing the stapler. I told you, we're going to be bringing the stapler in, okay? Today is the stapler's day. Or just hot glue everything because, you know, I know some of you do that. But if I want to resell these things, I need to make sure that they're not going to fall apart later. So I use staples and tacky glue and hot glue and all the... Okay, moving on. So I have this sped up slightly because it's kind of hard to explain. But I'm folding the fabric over so you cannot see the staples where I'm stapling it. And then I'm taking an extra piece of burlap to put at the top to completely cover the crease, and I'm going to use this little decorative, you know, ornate piece of ribbon to put right over the line where the two meet for a decorative accent. And yes, I'm using staples with my mini stapler to attach the other two pieces of fabric together, and using the tacky glue to apply the little decorative ornate piece of ribbon. I also tucked in tacky glue in every little section I could just to make sure that this sucker was going to be put together really well, and applied our little piece of ribbon. This also hides, you know, the staples I put in there and the little crease, and just makes it look a little bit more professional. Now on the sides, this is where I always struggle whenever I am DIYing anything, because you can leave it like that. Some people like those looks, or you can cover it up. And when you're doing fabric, you have to be mindful creating a pocket because you can create it so tight you can't fit anything in it. So this is definitely a stretch and staple as you go, and check the depth or the width that is inside by tucking your hand in there as you're stapling, trying to make sure that the fabric is all matching and aligning, because if you pull too tight in one side and it has a pattern on it, especially with this particular design I'm using, it could be lopsided and look really awful on the finish. I took some scissors and just cut any excess off around the back, and grabbed some Dollar Tree's nautical rope and more tacky glue and hot glue, and went little section by little section, applying this around the edge to cover up them staples. And of course, use whatever you want to cover this up. You could use twine, you could use a different type of ribbon, you could put some little beads, little half beads all around the edge. The possibilities are endless with this, or just leave it, you know what I mean? Brad nails would also look super cute. I had all the thoughts, you know, all the thoughts, but decided because of the color situation that I was using that the nautical rope would match fairly well. I did think that it looked really unfinished on the edge where the rope kind of met the burlap, and grabbed some little wooden buttons to pop right on in there. And whoever said crafting was not a messy job obviously is not doing it correctly. Because I had stuff all over my fingers. Tacky glue, hot glue, all the things. Use whatever you want to put a hanger on here. I just took some of this macrame cord I found at Dollar Tree, added some greenery in this sucker, and a little laser cutout on the front of our pocket, and I simply love this piece. For this fabric decoupage wall art, we're going to need 3 of the 5x7 canvases, or how many ever you want to use. Okay, this is what I had available to me at Dollar Tree. If you got the 8x10s, good for you. I'm just gluing these suckers together using some tacky glue and some hot glue, and then I let them dry a little bit. And then we need a plain white background. You could paint it, but I found this white burlap fabric at Dollar Tree, so we're going to use that. And let's not forget our napkin. We're going to be using this napkin. And no, I'm sorry, I do not have this available in any of my bundles on my website. I'm pretty much sold out of it except for my little stash. This stuff was all folded up, so I cut it to size to fit the inside of the 3 of our burlap frames we glued together, and then just ironed this out so it was nice and flat. I also frayed around the edges just a little bit, and that was a preference. You don't have to do that if you don't want to, obviously. And in case you're wondering why I'm using white, it's because white helps the napkin design to pop out. If you decide to leave that blue, that's not going to pop out very well when I'm applying the napkin. Also, because my napkin is white, it's going to blend into this fabric really well and just look like a nice piece of art. I'm using some pieces of craft foam to tape this onto, and the reason I'm not applying it onto our burlap surface right away is because I need a stiff and sturdy surface to apply the napkins to the fabric. This is not going to give me any play, and I'm only going to get this opportunity once. This stuff is super thick if you have never used this before. It is not like normal Mod Podge. Now, a lot of times I use fan brushes to apply napkins. I like to be able to go around the edges of the napkin and kind of peel them up. And fan brushes are super thin and allow me that ability to grab the edges and smoosh a little bit of extra Mod Podge around them. I peeled the napkin apart, leaving just the top decorative layer, and then tore what sections I wanted to create the scenery for our wall art. You can take this idea and do this with individual canvases. You could make this even larger. You could do this with one giant piece of burlap. Just make sure that you either paint the center of the burlap or you find a light color fabric to be able to apply your napkin art on there, or decoupage, or be a rebel and just leave it whatever color and pray the napkin design shows up. Who am I to tell you how to start your decoupage project? I'm just letting you know what works for me. Now, if you do go to do this, a little tip, section by section, little by little. And this is not the same concept that I'm usually like, less is more. No, you're gonna need a lot of fabric Mod Podge. And it's scary too, because you're doing the napkin and you're terrified that the napkin is gonna disintegrate or tear as you're doing this. That's why you see me doing it little sections. And right here, you're gonna notice I'm holding the napkin really tight with my pointer finger and thumb, and then just using my other hand to just tap down the section that I applied Mod Podge onto. And I continue doing this so that way as I'm applying it, it's not all wrinkly and bubbly. It is a really clean, crisp finish. And if you're a beginner and you're like, I'm never going to be able to do that, yes you will. You'll be able to get to this part. I've been doing this for years at this point, so I'm just telling you what I know, and if I can get there, you can get there. Okay, I'm a hot mess 90% of the time. You got this. And I want to give y'all a nice tip, because I am contacted about this weekly, and I probably don't talk about this enough because I'm constantly contacted about it. So I got y'all today. People are always asking, they Mod Podge and then all of a sudden the piece bubbles up, it was all fine, and then it wasn't. And I'm like, did you seal it right away before the Mod Podge that was underneath your napkin dried? And they're like, yes. Or you didn't put any Mod Podge underneath the napkin, you just Mod Podge the napkin from the top down. Don't do that. I don't know who's telling you to do that, but stop doing that. The only time I immediately go right over a napkin after I put Mod Podge underneath of it, if it's a tiny little project. If it's something big like this, let that sucker dry, y'all. Let it completely dry. It's going to dry really well. It's going to dry flawless, just like you applied it, like I am here. I'm going to give you a really nice close-up of this. I waited 24 hours before I came back over with the same exact Mod Podge and sealed right over the top of this. And I did that off camera to save y'all some viewing time, because this little section was kind of long, so I wanted to kind of speed up the process. I let that dry 2 to 3 hours and then brought in some tacky glue. And people, this stuff means business, so keep that in mind. If you're going to do fabric with anything, tacky glue is going to make sure that your project is staying on your wood it's staying on your fabric. It's just really great to use when you're messing with fabric. However, keep in mind, okay, keep in mind, it's a mess. If you are not using a tool, I should have definitely been using a tool to apply this. It was so stuck on my skin. Look at my skin. It is just, it was rough. Okay, listen, it's messy. Crafting's messy. And people, here is your close-up. I wanted to share with you just how flawless the napkin is on here. It absolutely looks like a piece of the fabric. If you wanted to add some colors in here, you could pop on some paint. I thought this was perfect just the way that it is. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think of this one. For this piece of decor, I busted out the floral pieces. That's right. I grabbed some florals and started putting them suckers together. I sized them up to make sure that they were the length of the canvas. Now, if you had an 8x10, I think this would look a lot better. And I also think that it would look gorgeous if you had 3, 4, even 5 of these canvases to create different ways of the floral, different ways the florals could go in here. You're going to see what I'm talking about in a second. You're going to need to take your X-Acto knife, put your little bundle right in the center, and just make some slits, okay? But keep in mind, you know, you want them to be fairly even. You don't want them to be crooked like mine are. You know what I'm saying? Suckers were so crooked. I had to go back in there and fix it. Once you're done making sure they're even, figure out what you want to wrap in and around your floral. I had this macrame cord from Dollar Tree, so I took some painter's tape, so this way it was easy for me to just kind of loop around, and I did this as many times as it took to fill up the slits that I made in the burlap. You could put regular ribbon in here, you could do metal lace if you have some of that. All of those ideas would look really cute. And people, as long as you don't glue anything down, you can tie it up just like this and switch it out for your decor all year long. People, if you're looking for an easy craft, this is not it. Run to the nearest craft store and figure something else out. However, if you want something time consuming that's going to turn out nice and you don't mind saying a few cuss words, then this is your project. Okay, find some fabric, find some napkins. I'm going to show you one of each and grab you a burlap canvas. You'll need one, you know, one for each. Technically we're using 2, but you know what I'm saying. And for this fabric one, I am not fabric anything. I wanted to make flowers. Okay, so I can't even describe to you how I did this other than I folded my squares in half. I made 6 big squares, 4 small squares. I folded them in half and then started pinching to the middle till I thought it kind of looked like what the lady on her YouTube channel was showing me. I will link her channel down in the description box with the video, so anybody that wants to go try and recreate these flowers. And this is what they look like. Or this mess is what they really look like, okay? Because this made a mess. And here's our beautiful napkin. And yes, I do have this napkin for sale in one of my napkin bundles on my website in the event that you're interested. I took this one and just pinched it up like this, looked like a bow tie, and took my, you know, my little stapler and just popped a staple right in the center of that. And again, I just pinched it. I don't know how else to describe this. I am not paper or fabric craft savvy. I don't even know how to describe what I'm doing, so bear with me. It's hard to describe something when you don't even understand the mechanic. I don't know how these turned into flowers. They just did. Okay, I got from point A to point B. But I will tell you, both had a base. Okay, both had a base. They also both had small and large flowers. Okay, and I glued them down using hot glue because I wasn't sure of anything else. So Hot glue it was. And the squares, really cut the little squares of cardboard down to what size you think your flowers are going to fit in. I did a couple little squares before I landed on my base, and then as you can see here, I'm just putting them in here till they make sense. Now I wanted something else in here, like a little filler, and had these little mesh pieces from Dollar Tree. I don't know why I love this stuff so much, but I do. And decided to kind of just put that down. That was not in the other video, by the way. This is just me adding random stuff in here because I have issues of just not being extra sometimes. I'm sorry. Anyhow, but on a side note, I also thought some greenery or baby's breath would look cute in here too, but I didn't add any of that. Anyhow, once I put the 4 smaller petals in here, you feel me? I went, and this needed something else. I wasn't happy with it just on its own. So I went in my stash and found this. Look at this little metal flower. I loved it so much. I glued that sucker right on down to the middle. And then I added a little gem right to the center of it for some bling. And glued our base right on down to the center of our canvas. For the napkin one, I wanted the same style flower, but didn't want to use the same idea because if I folded the napkin squares in half, then the napkin part of it wouldn't have a pattern. Does that make sense? So that's why I pinched it. And then I pinched them together, making little bunny ears, and then just stapled them down onto the base. And people, don't start me lying. There are a ton of YouTube tutorials on how to make paper flowers, how to make all the things. Go check that out. Find you a YouTuber that knows what they're talking about with that stuff, because your girl here, that is not my cup of tea. That's like asking me to make a wreath. I don't do that here. I'm sorry. I do, however, give you some crafty ideas. Well, at least I hope I do. I took some more of Dollar Tree's mesh and just glued that down, and then I cut a couple of pieces of the napkin in like a rounded triangle and pinched the bottom and put a staple in that sucker, and that was our smaller flower bits for the center here. And obviously I needed to add something in here, so a laser cut it is, or a laser cutout it is. That's going to be it for this video today, people. As always, thank y'all so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you enjoyed these burlap canvas pieces, and until next time, bye!